All right, ladies and gentlemen, the cold front around most of the country has moved in. Not for Justin and I, who live in St. Pete, Florida, but thought we'd have a little fireside chat, talk a little best ball, talk a little bit about our side bet, Justin's side bet, with Dan Zach as well. Let's get to it. All right, I'm Liam. We have on today Justin. The BBM 1 and BBM 2 champions, our fate forever intertwined with that and living in St. Pete, Florida. Justin and I also ripped some golf yesterday. Justin happened to hit a bird on the driving range, but we won't get into that. Justin, how you doing today, man?
That bird flew away. It was a drive. Bird was probably like 200 plus yards away. We'll see. You shouldn't be flying over the driving range. That's a no-fly zone.
Definitely a no-fly zone. So not a lot of structure for us today. Justin has a 50K side bet with the 2023 or 2022 WSOP World Series of Poker Player of the Year, Dan Zach, and he hit me up for a much smaller side bet, not $50,000, that me and him have going on. So we thought we'd break down the side bet, talk about the best ball season overall, how we're feeling about everything. Justin, maybe you could first tell the people how the side bet came to be with Dan Zach, and then we can jump into some nitty gritty.
Yeah. And we were out golfing yesterday, did a little par 3 course. And so we were chatting some best ball and figured, hey, why not kind of continue the conversation here? So a little background on the Dan Zach. During COVID, and then it continued into the early half of this year. But in the poker world, we were seeing tons and tons of these head-to-heads, heads up for rolls kind of bets. And it seemed like it was fantastic from a community standpoint, from an engagement. I think a lot of people really got interested watching like the day after day of this. And so tried to think through what could this look like for a best ball perspective. And I think I just put out a random tweet from a more theoretical stance saying like, hey, I love what's been happening in the heads up stance for the poker world. Any ideas on if we could make this happen from a best ball, from like what would that structure look like? And hey, if anyone's interested, let me know. And then Dan Zach reached out, didn't know much about Dan Zach other than like familiar of him from the poker world, but had never chatted with him before, never talked to him. And he was just like, hey, if we can figure out the right structure, I love the idea of it. Let's do it. And so he and I probably took about a week or two of kind of thinking through what this could look like. We then consulted with some other kind of the big hitters in this space as well, and tried to come up with a structure that most mirrored the drafting experience for BBM, meaning we didn't want to change the way that we were drafting at all compared to how we would normally be drafting for the BBM. And actually, when we were like almost at the finish line, we had a structure in place that actually, instead of it being a proportional on how much money was won in that second part, it was just going to be whoever had the more winnings. And what that would turn into is you actually should optimize week 16 because all you really need is to get one team to week 17 because only 10% of people would even do that with 150. And so we just continued to modify it, tweak it a little until what we tried to figure out was the best. And then even after that, Liam and I, we've talked throughout the year on ways to continue to improve this bet. And if I do another one next year, we'll probably modify it a little more. But I think overall, it's still a pretty solid structure, been a pretty fun bet. And as long as neither of us die, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I have it up on screen for you, but basically what it boils down to is 1/3 of the bet is allocated to your advance rate on your teams. And then 2/3 is your ROI. Now, Justin and I have talked about this on the side where I don't think it's perfectly structured to mirror BBM, where what it's turning into is it puts a lot of weight on your regular season leaderboard teams for the ROI percentage because, and we had kind of talked about this in the past where no matter how good of a drafter you are, your average return on a Best Ball Mania 4 draft is negative. So to me, when you have different quantity of drafts, whoever did less drafts already is going to have a small advantage in my mind, just because, yes, that extra draft could win you $3 million, obviously, but on average, it's going to be a negative return. And then I think a lot of our ROI is going to come down to leaderboard teams where if you have a team on the top 10K, it's going to be $250. If you get a team to the playoffs and it loses week 15, that's $35 or whatever it is. So even if you get a team to week 17, if it min cashes for $1,000, that's going to be negated by leaderboard team. So it's not perfect, but obviously you couldn't foresee everything when you made it.
And real quick, because I think it's worth noting, if you make it to week 15 and lose, well, 2 out of 12 teams, 17% of teams are going to do that. So that deserves $35. If you have a team in the top 10,000, that's what? Top 2% and change. So obviously that deserves more money from a payout structure. But I think where it comes into play is we've already said Underdog allocated a third of the money to the regular season and 2/3 to the playoffs. We already have a third of the money allocated to the regular season with advance rates. We're double counting a bit when we're now also allocating that 250 or whatever you cash in the regular season, because that will come in to the 67,000 to the proportional for the ROI. I think we are double counting. And that's one that I agree we probably could have tweaked a little there.
I brought the double counting. So, really the only difference we would make is I think Justin and I talked is we would just put the regular season ROI into the 1/3 and then have the ROI of just playoff teams more mirrors the contest a little bit there. Yeah. But, pretty nice structured. I also think between us, maybe I was at an advantage or maybe disadvantage where how early did this bet come to be for you guys?
Look to see when that tweet is.
May 3rd. So right from the start of the contest, right?
We wanted to make sure that we had it locked in before the contest went live.
Yeah. And then I don't know when you reached out to me. I want to say August or so.
We did a stream together and we were already chatting around this stream and then we finalized it on a stream. So whatever stream that was, I'm sure
we can go back and look. Maybe it was July, maybe it was August, but I wasn't drafting with this in mind, and maybe that's to my advantage or disadvantage. I really don't know what I would or wouldn't do differently. Obviously, in the past, I've said I'm not trying to advance. I'm really trying to think through week 17. And I think my early teams really showcases that where I'm advancing of my first 41 teams. I'm advancing one team right now, which is not good, right? If we look at Justin and I's advance rates right now, Justin has 35 out of 150, and I am at 29 out of 150. So we're pretty even there on advance rates. Justin's also pulled up some graphs, and I have some data to dive more into that. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, though, let's just talk about the best ball season as a whole. To me, this year is pretty unusual where not only are a bunch of guys getting injured, which is usual, but a bunch of mid-round quarterbacks specifically are getting injured. So that will hurt you if you drafted like that. And then the biggest thing to me that's unusual is just the quantity of league winners from round 18, right? Where if one of us had a big Puka bag, a big Kyron bag, a big Achane bag, Mostert, Zach Moss, you could be really dominating another guy. Now I know between you and Dan really drafts a really particular kind of way, really heavily weighted towards hyper-fragile. So he just, by his portfolio, would not have a lot of Achane, Kyron, Zach Moss, because he's not drafting running backs those rounds. But he would have a lot of Thielen. You and me, I would guess, drafted a lot more similarly, where we have some hyper-fragile, we have some zero RB, we have a hodgepodge where who knows where what one of us was doing less or more. But talk to us a little bit about your take on how the season's gone so far.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fair. We'll get into that grid and the advance rates because I think that helps.
You want me to pull that one up?
Yeah, let's pull up because I think as I was building this out, I found some interesting things and kind of things that surprised me as well. We were talking about quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers has an advance rate of 10%. And you can't argue that it's being pulled up by like his stack partners because Garrett Wilson's is extremely low. Breece Hall's whatever, fine. And so that's 10%. And then
or his week 17 partners are not good either, right? Like the Cleveland guys aren't helping either.
No, not at all. Right. That's 10% and it's around 11. But then if you look at like Deshaun Watson, who obviously hasn't been good because he's been hurt and he's lower at 7.8%. You look at Joe Burrow, who's 8.6%. And so you can miss on these mid and late QBs this year and still not get completely dusted. I think that's pretty interesting. But if you miss on an early or a mid QB, it really tanks you. And it's because of an opportunity cost standpoint. And so similarly, A.J. Dillon is my highest owned player. No, maybe there's a typo. It's my highest owned running back, I think. And I have him at 22%. And that feels ugly. He's only probably helped me 1 week maybe. But in the round he was drafted, I think he has like the second highest advance rate behind like Brian Robinson. And it just feels ugly. But like that entire round, the 11th round, I think it is.
Yeah, it's a weird round where it's like, I think Jalen Warren's outscored him, but A.J. Dillon is out advancing him.
Jalen Warren doesn't have like a game over 10 points. Like he has a whole bunch of like 7 to 9s or something.
Yeah.
Maybe. And so like those don't actually help you. That's where I was like looking through. It's pretty interesting where your misses later on in the drafts, they don't really hurt you. Now, obviously, if you miss on every single one, you miss out on the Mosterts and the Achans and the Mosses. That's where it hurts you. But on an individual, like if you want to take a stand on a later player, you're not really going to be hurt. And so that's where I thought that was interesting. And then the QB aspect, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. Very, very few teams have both those guys. We agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can say almost 60% of teams or have Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, meaning if you didn't draft one of those two guys, more likely you are not advancing. It's crazy how much of an impact those two are making. And I think the gap is only going to continue to widen as we have all these injuries in the mid and late rounds.
Yeah, and on the elite quarterback front, like I saw some discussion on this on Twitter where someone was trying to point out that it is inflated due to the failure of the mid-round quarterbacks or really just them getting hurt. But my counterpoint would be that because I'm always an elite quarterback guy from a process standpoint, especially on half-point PPR where they just contribute a higher percentage of your points. But my point was, in a year where Jalen Hurts and Lamar get hurt, you might think, oh, hey, like I drafted Daniel Jones, Goff, and Love. Like I'm doing great. 2 guys got hurt. Well, I would say actually now you're just like the Mahomes and Josh Allen teams are just that much better. And I would also say that, like from a market standpoint, the availability of an Anthony Richardson or last year to Justin Fields in the mid rounds is not a sticky year-to-year phenomenon to me. I think every year we're going to have what Tua is doing this year, what Stafford and Brady was 2 years ago. Like we'll have a couple of those guys, but I don't think we're going to have these like athletic rushing quarterbacks in rounds 9, 10, 11, 12 every single year from a year-to-year phenomenon. And just like on the Aaron Rodgers point you brought up earlier, I think part of it is just the Aaron Rodgers drafter is more likely to have 3 quarterbacks as a whole, where if you have like a Rodgers, Sam Howell, CJ Stroud team, like that team's doing good. There's not too many late round quarterbacks that are just like killing you. Like Jimmy G's done, Tannehill's done, Kyler Murray's about to come back, Russell Wilson's been fine, like Kenny Pickett is playing, Carr you're getting by with. So it is a really interesting thing before we talk more about this chart, this is not going to look pretty on my end because this is just my mind. So I'll pull this away. This is Justin and I's top 10 exposures at the positions, and we can remove I just like zeroed out good picks and bad picks. So we'll look at Justin first here, and I'll zoom in for the people. So these are, and this might not be perfect because I just pulled this from the BBM leaderboard scrolling through. I don't know why one guy's missing on your quarterbacks. Richardson didn't copy for us for some reason. Let's pull him. Okay. Oh, it didn't copy because it's white text on on a burgundy background. But these are Richardson numbers here. So both of us are missing Richardson. It's hurting me a little bit more because I had 18% to your 9%.
Just highlight the whole area and then click on the font and make the font black.
Yeah, let's just do that. Good idea. Make the font.
There you go.
Black. Okay. So Justin's top quarterback's Lamar. Mine's Allen. That's pretty much a tie. Slight lean for me there.
Strong lean right now. Like Lamar's one of the more shocking advance rates if we were looking at it. I think his advance rate is actually negative.
So shocking because he's like pulling up Bateman, I thought, with 15% here. Let's see. Lamar is 16.6%. So exactly even.
Yeah. I mean, Josh Allen's 14% higher than him. And so I was trying to think through that. And I think it becomes the people who are getting Lamar were rarely getting but like Tyreek and Lamar around 17. There should have been, week 17 correlation you should have had.
Well, it's the Bills pieces helping it. And also Lamar's had 2 floor games.
3.
Right?
Yeah.
3, yeah.
He's had 3 bad ones.
Like, so Josh Allen's just outscoring him by pretty significant margin on the season, right? Let me see. I'll pull it up. Fantasy Pros, QB points. If I can spell there. So Josh Allen's at 193.5 points. Lamar is 30 points behind, but he's giving you a 12-point week and an 8-point week and an 11-point week. And Josh is giving you so Josh has 2 bad games, but his 15.
The advance rate doesn't feel like it should be that wide, and I can only come down to you got McCaffrey and you have Tyreek.
I think it's the plus of Gabe Davis and Diggs versus Andrews.
There aren't that many
right?
Diggs Josh Allen teams though.
Well, my teams are that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look that up actually. Roster combos. Or no. We want to look at leaderboard. So Josh Allen and Diggs.
So there's 677,000 teams. These guys.
That's 11,000. But like
11,000 out of 660. So 667,000 teams, divide that by 12, and you're looking at about what, 100,000, 50,000 teams?
If we just do Lamar, it's like 56,000, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Just Lamar is 56,000. So
56.5. Yeah.
So 20% of Diggs teams have Josh Allen.
That's like pretty significant. And then the Lamar, but I think it's really the negative correlations of the Lamar pieces where Bateman's dragging you down. That combo, 16,000.
Andrews is good though. Flowers is good.
Flowers is not good for half-point PPR, I don't think.
Yeah, that could be fair. What's his advance rate in the chart?
He is like fine. His advance rate in the chart is... And the real thing about Flowers is he cost you Addison or Gabe Davis or Mike Evans.
He's 17.4, just above. Yeah. All the way to the left.
But it's like the opportunity cost of those 3 guys who are giving you touchdowns, which is drag. Where is he at?
All the way to the left. Round 7, pick 1.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, but I think it's the cost of like Montgomery or Addison or Gabe or Mike Evans or
yeah, well, that's fair.
the other guys. Looking back at our exposure, so you have Daniel Jones not helping you, and I have Richardson, obviously a 0. Hurts a smash for you, but you only got 4% on me because he's my QB8. Kenny Pickett, was this just a bet on the Steelers' resurgence, or are you drafting a lot of QBs in that range?
That was probably if I'm gonna do like a 3 QB build. I liked Pickett. I got a good amount of, I think, Deontay. I think he has like a rush. He has like a sneaky rushing aspect, and probably just in that range as well. Like he was the guy that I was drafting more than others.
Fair.
And so Jones and Pickett have been a lot of 0s, but this is the first week they're both healthy, so hopefully that trends upward.
Well, and I mean, I don't have high hope for Pickett, but Jones I do. Goff, we're pretty much tied on. Stroud is helping me, and Howell's helping me for sure at quarterback.
I was very low in those two. I usually just had my QBs by that late.
Yeah. Well, you just kind of chose Bryce Young, it seems, because you did take guys in that range.
That's fair. That's fair.
Bryce, I'm with you. My approach to rookie QBs is I just draft them all, right? So it's like I'm no college talent evaluator, so it's like, okay, if you get a top 3 pick in the real NFL draft, I will bet on you. Trevor has been awful. He's like, I was really betting on the Jags passing attack, which is not. I mean, it's like Kirk is helping you.
ETN.
Ridley's not.
ETN's getting all the goal line, all the red zone work. Yeah.
Yeah. Cousins. I mean, I had 8% Cousins, so
yeah, that's just.
And Russ is kind of helping you. Running back, some hits and misses for us both. AJ Dillon, not great for you. Pirine, not great, but like.
But I want to mention here as well, AJ Dillon actually, as I mentioned, was the second best draft pick in that group because everyone that
maybe, but
yeah, that's what past tense is. Was the second best. I mean, obviously things can change. But like,
well, it's like, would you rather have Dillon or Charbonnet going forward?
Yeah, going forward, Charbonnet.
Yeah. But you're right. Like so many terrible picks here. Tony, Burks, Bateman.
So all I was going to say is like, while I'm 22% AJ Dillon and I'm lower on like Jaylen Warren, if I would have said, oh, I'm actually 16% each, it doesn't matter. Or if I would have spread it to other guys, like that 22% in my mind felt so much worse than when I actually looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, if I wasn't drafting him, I would have drafted someone else who also wouldn't have been good.
Yeah, and I mean, the draft board's dynamic, obviously, so, like, this is not the round 9 ADP from the whole season, but, like, I guess the best move here was either to get
Brian Robinson.
Get Brian Robinson, who, like, he was, like, more like, yeah, or get, like, Tua or Richardson, but obviously
sure, it would be a better thing to take a guy that was drafted around before.
Yeah, or the point I was trying to make is to reach on a guy like Kincaid or Nico Collins, and this kind of like I would say if you're trying to look for actionable takeaways and you're watching this, it's to free yourself from ADP tethers in the later rounds. But just go ahead and look at this on your own time and think about like, yeah, when you reach, sometimes you're going to land on Alan Lazard if you're reaching, right? But if you landed on a Kincaid, Nico, whatever, now you're building unique teams by ADP and better teams than the market.
I'll throw QB in there. I think those 3 QBs were all good bets. And Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, and Dak Prescott at that spot. Anthony Richardson would have been a huge hit. Daniel Jones, like, obviously not great. The team is worse than we thought. He suffered with the injury, but I don't know. I think fine process. And I think Dak actually is probably the second best, if not the best pick going forward in that area.
Yeah, you definitely feel good about Dak going forward, even though he's been bad to date. Ty Chandler, not helping you a lot. Probably ran a little bit bad with the Akers trade there. It's funny because our portfolios have like major leverage on each other at points where I have 20% Pollard, which is obviously, I was like shocked he was a plus advance rate guy, which would be bad, but it's canceled out by your 18% Devontae Adams. So it's basically just like who's going to be better between Pollard and Adams, which feels like a coin flip to date.
In rest of way, I'd call it a coin flip, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Rest of the way. Brian Robinson, great pick for you.
Which is funny because, like, in that area, I must have only been drafting A.J. Dillon, Samaje Perine, and Brian Robinson. Like, they were all in that same area, and I've got 60% of those three. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I've definitely thought through some of my stances here. Like, Warren, it's like, Warren is never going to be Achane, right? Now, an Achane's not always going to exist, but there's a lesson there. I have the 3 Philly guys just tied, which 2 of them suck, and Swift is great. So like that's helping me. Damian Harris, I think he's out for the year, and also was probably not a great process pick. And then Ramondre over Etienne, obviously not great, but he's at least like giving you points. And Kyron, a major win, who I need to come back. For you, Jacobs, I feel good about, Jacobs not been a smash, but he's giving you points. He's like Ramondre.
He's solid. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got more.
No. Do not say he's like Ramondre.
Well, I mean, we can just look at
so much better of a pick
here
from like a going forward and as well. Like, yeah.
Ramondre, I mean, he was more expensive. Right?
By like a half a round.
Yeah, he was more expensive. He's outscored him by 20 points. And
I would take him way over going forward.
Actually, sorry, that was in half. I mean, I don't know how you can say that about a guy who just fired their coach and just demoted their quarterback, but maybe I think you got screwed because Jacobs to the Ravens, I think maybe was going to happen if they didn't fire their GM and coaching staff.
Yeah, that was a crazy one. But also, like, that would have been a backdoor. Like, I didn't draft Jacobs on the expectation he was ever going to get traded. Yeah.
Yeah. Gainwell is tied for us.
I think we ran bad with Gainwell because how the season looked and starting with Gainwell before DeAndre Swift had that one kind of, when Gainwell was injured in the breakout game, I think we would have had a lot more Gainwell and a bit more of a share than what we've seen. But yeah,
I'm just going to put guys in red who are like drawing live to probably just be zeros the rest of the season. Penny, I have some hope that he'll get activated late in the season, but he is there. So for me, Damian, Penny, and Bigsby, like Bigsby just needs an injury, and he's also been brutally bad, so maybe even that won't help him. For you,
no. Don't make that red. One injury to CMC, and he is the guy.
No, I mean, I don't think he's actually that ahead of Jordan Mason. Like you can hope him that, but I think he's like pretty tied for him. So whatever. We could put him yellow if you want, but he's kind of like a Bigsby guy to me.
I agree with that.
And then P. Ryan and Dylan.
No. P. Ryan, you can go red. Dylan, I think, is fine. Dylan's actually looked pretty decent.
He's not great from a half-point PR. Like, it takes so much for him to get 15 points and almost never 20,
And he does it. And he
No, don't worry. I have pieces of Green Bay, too. More expensive pieces.
You're just making the guy that's literally the second best pick in his round in yellow. I don't know.
Well, it's like Charbonnet's been a zero, but I'm hopeful on him because he's getting 50% of the snaps, and Pollard too. Pollard's been in Pollard versus Devontae Adams. I don't know. We can both probably copium our side, but at least Pollard's game scripts have been insane, and maybe they get more normal.
He's 2022 Joe Mixon. He's got great usage, and the team is not using him in creative ways, and he's no longer has the speed or the burst, and it's ugly. Yeah,
and also like exposures are over portfolio, obviously. So like my early teams, they don't have any Kyron. I don't think I have as much Swift from early teams too. So like my early teams are just kind of drawing dead, a lot of them. And I also I went 2 QB with Richardson a lot, just depending on him in an 18-round site. So those teams are thin too. I think you feel good about Algier for you. Singletary, like the delta between. What you expected. Yeah. Singletary, I think it's going to be the starter this week, maybe. Justin, you're getting some ribbing there, but I'm with you on the hopium.
He said he respects. That's not ribbing. That's a compliment.
Yeah. The delta between you and me on Jacobs and Singletary is probably not that great because I took Jacobs and I definitely took Singletary.
I misunderstood for you for a second. I thought you were saying the delta between Jacobs and Singletary is not that much, and I was going to be like, "Get the fuck out of here, Liam."
No, for us.
I understand from an ownership.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have two huge smashes here, Kyron and Swift, which you don't have really any of these players. So that's.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Swift, definitely not. Kyron, I do, but like not nearly as much as you. Compared to the field, I have a decent, because I think I'm at 4 or 5%.
Let's see. You have two teams with Kyron.
Never mind.
And this is a great thing about this. We don't have to, we can just check it.
Swift
and 7 teams of Swift.
I have so many more. We were talking about it on DraftKings, I think. What I tell you, I had 8 or 10% Kyron. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the classic, like, this is the classic guy who people were taking in 20 rounds. And it's just like a reminder in round 18. It's like, hey, who cares that Ty Chandler or name in round 18 pick is always going there? Pick anyone else, and you can get leverage. So moving to wide receiver, I would say both our top guys feel good, Hollywood and Gabe. Obviously, I got a bigger stand on Gabe, which just means I have less Addison, less Mike Evans in that round because of it.
That was a solid round. Gabe could break out, though, the way he was used in the last week.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fascinating to watch. Like, I don't know. I think that was because Tampa blitzes and plays zone versus like a blitz and man team, you know? So, like, I don't know if we're going to see that going forward, but just the fact that like a floor could be held from him is exciting. You getting that massive touchdown week from Hopkins is awesome. I don't know if you're going to be seeing that going forward, but you know, you feel better with Will Levis in there.
Feel a lot better than we did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? That's probably his top game all season, but maybe not. We're tied on Kirk.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns and 120 yards. I'm okay if that's his top game of the season.
Sure. Mike Evans is out for the year. Obviously, that one's hurting me.
Mike Williams. I think I have like 14% Mike Williams too, so there's not that much of a delta.
Addison, I would lower Addison. Addison is basically just Hollywood Brown now. So it's kind of funny for your portfolio where it's like Addison is now Hollywood, but Hollywood is going to get the upgrade with Kyler, which feels good.
Yeah, here's some hopium. I gave this on my pod earlier, but I think that Jordan Addison has an opportunity to minimize the gap between him and Justin Jefferson because he's going to get an extra like 2 to 3 weeks of practice and play time with Josh Dobbs. So maybe Josh Dobbs comes in, Addison's his number 1 wide receiver, develops that rapport, and then Justin Jefferson, obviously, amazing talent, much better talent, but it may just take a little more time for them to develop that connection. So I think like Hawkinson, it's good for. Addison, not good for, but it's just not as bad.
Thanks, Coop. He's loving that we're just highlighting in green, yellow, reds. My take on the Viking situation is that it's actually best for Hawkinson.
I don't know if that was Cardinals or Dobbs. I think it was more of a Cardinals scheme thing, but I'm also accept it could be a Dobbs thing.
Yeah, we'll see. But like, I mean, obviously, I'm just saying,
also,
hey,
look what Hawkinson.
Yeah, look what Trey McBride and look what Zach Ertz did with him. And to your credit, the offensive line's a lot better for the Vikings. So like maybe that was an offensive line thing too, where hey, I literally can't throw it down the field because I'm getting pressure, and now maybe he's going to be able to throw it to Addison. So my like intermediate take was like it's good for Hawkinson, but when Jefferson comes back, he might just get them all.
The one thing I'll note there is last year, we also saw Zach Ertz as a huge primary target share guy in Arizona, and that was before Josh Dobbs. So I do think it's a little more of a scheme thing with Arizona, but also no reason Josh Dobbs can't carry that, hey, favoriting security blanket at Hawkinson component.
Yeah, so we got a mixed bag.
Why is Gallup red? I thought Gallup's been pretty decent.
Gallup's been awful, man. What do you mean? Gallup's had 3 targets last week.
Well, we didn't expect much out of him, but give me
he's been a 0. I mean, if I'm throwing Slate, I mean, he's running routes. He had a 110 target game where he got 24 yards. These are the game logs. 3 targets, 2 catches, 20. 3 catches, 10 targets, 24. 2, 5, 15. He had
those 2
middling games in the middle, but now I think he's hurt again too.
It's fallen off after that. Okay, those weeks 3 and week 4, there was definitely some hope for Gallup, but last 3 weeks have been pretty bad. Although
Justin is very attached to my red and green labeling here.
Yeah,
big
2
Christmas
weeks ago, he had a 33% target share.
No, you're right. Michael Thomas.
Give me a yellow for Gallup. Come on.
If I'm putting JSN and Devontae Adams yellow, do you feel Gallup is on the yellow tier?
So obviously they don't. I think on a draft capital standpoint.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Red is also like I have low faith in them going forward.
So like
these guys, I'm
even saying most 17th and 18th rounders are going to be red. Like most 14 to 18th are just red no matter what. We're not evaluating it based off their draft capital. This is very serious stuff. We need to set the guidelines. We need to know what guarantees and what resonates the colors.
It's a little bit of a opportunity cost, like is Slayton killing me? No, but he cost me Puka or whatever. Rondale I would put red, but there's some hope with Kyler back, and Sutton is like sun running touchdowns. He's fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Jaden Reed, and you got some hope for. You got a big target share. The Diggs and Chase thing. Diggs and Chase being for me obviously makes them being green easy, but also cost me. Basically, it just came at the cost of like Kelsey and Eckler for Diggs, and then for Chase, I have less Jefferson, less Tyreek, less CMC. So
yeah, can we talk Eckler real quick? It is setting up for this to be one of the biggest, most impactful, like low-owned players in the playoffs. He is literally the lowest advance rate on the board right now, and on a weekly projection standpoint, so he's 5.6%, literally the lowest out of everyone. And on a projection standpoint, he's like RB2 the rest of the way. And
yeah, he's a hard one where I'm with you. I would be excited. I mean, I'd be excited to advance any of these guys. I think I'd be more excited for Bijan. I'm just a little bit worried about the overall offense and him, where he's been a little bit disappointed in the games he's played. Obviously, he's been injured, but I'm with you for playoff purposes. I'm excited. I understand you bringing that up when we get to tight end because I'm killing tight end. My top 3 guys are smashing.
He's been disappointing in the games he's played. Go check out his recent box score. What
do you do? 15 points per game or so. He had one good game against the Bears, and then week 1 too.
I think he's played 3 games.
I wanted to say on Hawkinson, because I've even seen some faders be like, oh, I was wrong. Hawkinson was a great pick. I don't know if I agree, even though I had a lot of Hawkinson, because my take on Hawkinson is, okay, so he gave you a game against the Bears, and he gave you a game against the Dolphins, and
he was RB2
and he was bad against the Chiefs in Dallas.
He was RB2 week 1, RB5 against Miami. So 50% of his games,
he had 1.9 yards per carry against the Bears. 1.9 yards per carry against the Bears is. You're right.
And 7 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown. Let's use the entire box score here.
I'm just saying,
7.3 yards per carry against Miami.
Part of the thesis of fading Eckler is he's old, and when you're inefficient, that may be true. Now, obviously, he gets a boost with Mike Williams out of there, but real quick on Hawkinson,
he had a 7.3 yards per carry on Miami. That was quite, pretty selective.
Well, Justin, that's week 1, and so you got to play the whole season. And so if you're,
So we should have used the most recent game last week when he had 7.3 yards per carry, and yards per carry is pretty much the worst stat that exists. But
okay. Anyways, thick ass stash. I'm sure that Daniel's complimenting me. The point I was trying to make on Hawkinson is, even though I took a lot of him and he's done fine to date, is he's also not a smash half point PPR guy to me. just because he's not explosive, right? And so, yes, he's a volume guy. He could be a PPR scam guy. But on half-point PPR, we really want the guys who can go catch a 60-yard bomb, which Hawkinson clearly does not have. So even though I have a lot of him, I feel okay about it. I don't think he's the best process pick. I wanted to hammer that home. Your top
I like him
three,
a lot. I liked him a lot more in DraftKings.
yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Kincaid, obviously Kincaid's done nothing to date other than the past two a little bit, but going forward, feel great about it. Feel great about Laporta.
Yep.
You know, Hawkinson's been okay to date. He could maybe fall apart or maybe succeed. Both of us have lost Knox. He also, like, I drafted a lot of Knox last year, and compared to my stand on Kincaid, feels way different. Whereas like Kincaid, first round pick, rookie, can obviously like be good. Knox was a bet on him falling on the touchdowns, which is this year it's fine because he's cheap, and clearly you made that bet with just late round tight end. But last year when he was expensive is like, what are you hoping with him?
Yeah, for me this year, I believe strongly that Dalton Kincaid was not going to play the tight end position over Dawson Knox. And it was going to be and that wasn't a bet against Kincaid. I think I ended up right at about 8 or 9% on Kincaid, but it was just, I felt that Knox's price was so cheap because the general market, not you, Liam, the general market felt that no, Kincaid was going to steal the work from Knox. And so I thought you were basically getting the same Dawson Knox as last year, but at a much cheaper price this year. And just ended up, obviously, the injury's fortunate. I think he will be back, though. You would know.
Yeah, he's going to be back.
Yeah.
But I think he's like, I don't know. I think they're going to run 12 at like 20%, 10%, maybe more in like a game plan. But I think like 11 is their best set. And I think like Kincaid was going to get there even if Knox didn't get hurt to me. Like he got there in the game that Knox played with the Patriots, but that's probably helps.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I think Kincaid was still a good pick. I just don't think that Knox should have been as cheap as he was because Kincaid existed. And like if you look at Knox, like he was still running routes on about 65, 70% plays out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just going through the tight end, like your top three obviously don't feel great. Two of them hurt, though. It's not really in your control.
Freiermuth one feels tough. He came out pretty strong for that team, but
well, yeah, it's just like that also helps the Kincaid pick to me because I was like, look, I'm not afraid of Freiermuth and Njoku was my take especially on a site where you need touchdowns. Hunter Henry ran real hot to start the season, but he is like literally last in ESPN open score, so not a great sign for him going forward. Higbee and Musgrave I'd be leaving the light on for. I got a lot of Musgrave too. Andrews is a smash.
The Hunter Henry's interesting. The first 5 games, he had like a 75% route run rate. The last 2 or 3 have really dropped off. I am curious with the Kendrick Bourne injury because you also saw Kendrick Bourne's kind of meteoric rise inversely correlated to that. So I wonder who, like Denario Douglas is going to get like 20% of the targets.
Maybe more, 30. Like,
yeah, we've got him projected, I think, around 20 at ETR, around like 20%, 20 to 22. But the question is, like, are you then going to use more of these 2 tight ends? Are you going to use more Hunter Henry? I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's I don't know. There's a tiny, tiny bit of hope, but
I think he's going to lose work to Gesicki, maybe even. Like, it's dire if we go off the ESPN analytics, and I think the thing we care about most, Pat Crane's pointed out, is open score, which he is last in the league for at tight ends. Now, Gesicki's not much better. I don't really know a 40 versus 29 comparatively, but you certainly don't love seeing your player down here. Now, Laporta is succeeding at not great underlying measures, so
same with Jonnu.
Yeah, Jonnu, but he's like.
I wonder how much this is team things, because it's interesting that you have Pitts and Jonnu on there, and you have Henry and Gesicki on there. So I wonder if that's more of a how these tight ends are used, whether they get them in space or whether it's more of like a, hey, get off the line of scrimmage, don't get space. I don't know.
It's a little bit of ADOT. it's a little bit, those two teams are just bad at evaluating talent, probably. And Kyle Pitts is a little bit injured, I think we would say. But finishing off the tight ends, like Kittle's green, Hawkinson's green. It doesn't speak to the opportunity cost of these two dudes, though. So you can't just like be like a good pick, bad pick.
Kittle's Goddard, very good run good with the Deebo Samuel injury. When Deebo's healthy, Kittle's splits with and without are just night and day.
Yeah, and we have Patrick in the chat who runs the tool. I think usable weeks would be a great thing to add, Patrick, if easy on your end. So that's our top 10.
Sorry, real quick. He's the one who has the BBM DB website?
Yes, correct.
All right. Shout out to him. Well done. You've created a tool that is extremely valuable and that I've in my head thought through like what should this look like? Because I know like a couple other sites have tried to take advantage of when they exported the data and well done. Yeah.
Yeah, what I've said in the past is it's really removed the gatekeeping and also has improved the quality. Because in the past, I've been like, look, what data do you even have to analyze some of this stuff? And some people were given data and able to do it with coding abilities, but he's given this tool for someone like me who obviously has an interest and ability to like think through what to look at, but does not have the ability to sort through code or anything like that. So big shout out to Patrick, a huge gift to the community. Goddard's been a weird one too, where he's giving you some weeks, but expensive. Like I'd put him, like a worse Kittle almost, but similar. He was cheaper too.
Did you go to the board and see who was drafted around Goddard? I'm curious what those should be like round 8 or 9.
Goddard 1 round after Kittle, round 7. But he got cheaper at the end.
That's fair.
Looks like it cost you Montgomery, Kamara, Hollywood, Gabe Davis, guys like that. I personally thought he was like one of the worst picks on the board to start because he was more expensive to start in round 6, but then he got cheaper, and so I mixed him in a little bit.
I was always taking him over Kyle Pitts, and I feel like a lot of the industry felt otherwise, and maybe that was more of a kind of a safe versus upside kind of scenario.
And if you guys want to buy Patrick a beer,
at the very
you can do that. You buy me a beer. It's on his site. This tool is of course under my Best Ball resource tab in my Discord. The link to join that is below, but I'll also put a link to his chat right here. So shout out Patrick. Let's look at some other stuff. This Justin pooled is our advancing team. So Justin currently has an edge on me in advance rate by a little bit. Also, I don't know what to make of this graph because clearly you have more third place teams and I have more fourth place teams. Just before the stream, I pooled our numbers on, and this is a really arbitrary number, but I just counted how far away are we within 50 points? And you have 25 teams that are not advancing within 50 points, and I have 32. So a little bit edge to me. Now, I think before we actually look at that graph, we'll talk about, I also looked at the first round ADPs really from like to Adams, Saquon, and Garrett Wilson, and just pulled where we have leverage on each other. So what it came down to, and I pulled this a couple weeks, but these were teams within 50 or so points of advancing, and our respective how many more teams we have than each other. So I have 7 more Chase teams than Justin, and he has 5 more CMC teams than me. Not overall in the contest, but just like within close of advancing. And then I have 1 more Tyreek, and he has 6 more Cup. I have 10 more Diggs, and he has 5 more Kelsey. And I have 3 more AJ Brown, and he has 4 more Eckler. So that sums the point.
What about Justin Jefferson?
This removed Justin Jefferson, but you have.
I have a lot.
8 more. When I pulled this, which was after week 6, you had 8 more Justin Jefferson teams than me, and I had 0. So that's where I'm getting the Chase over on you, which we haven't really felt yet, right? Like, so that's like I think going forward, I might have a slight edge just looking at the exposures, but my early teams, I think, are all dead. So maybe not, just because I have Chase and Pollard both through the bye. And
yeah, I would look at the chart, and I think the big thing with the chart that's telling the graph that we were looking at earlier that shows our two colors, the blue and orange.
Okay, yeah, we'll look at that in a sec. And just finishing it up, I have 8 Pollard teams, and he has 3 Bijan. He has 12 Devontae Adams teams and 3 Amon-Ra teams, and I have 3 Saquon teams and 3 Garrett Wilson teams. Which I mean, is Garrett Wilson dead? Maybe, but yeah, I mean, he got it done in a game.
Yeah.
And then looking at this is more recent data. So I am orange. Yeah. So I have a lot of teams in 4th and 5th. Now, again, you can have a team in 7th place that's 20 points away, right? So it's not perfect to look at place, but it's good enough.
But the 20 points thing is also like if you are 20 points behind, but there's also 4 people that also are 20 points behind, you're not just getting 20 points on one person. You've got to cover a lot of ground and hope they don't also. So I think like even just points behind has its flaws.
Sure.
The biggest, so I have, I think, 23 teams that are in first right now. And the first is probably the greatest indicator of what you're going to finish with. Because usually the gap between first and second is the largest gap of any gap other than 11th and 12th. And so anything you have in first, you assume by overall larger population, you have that large gap, and it's the most predicted that it's going to stay in that top spot, or at least top 2. Everything else after that, it remains pretty fluid. And I think we're at a spot right now where for the most part, you can still expect 3 to 4 movement up and down. And so, yeah, those 4th and 5th place teams are very much still in the hunt.
I wanted to ask you, because we got week 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 6 weeks, right? And there's going to be some buys to some big teams week 13. How many points back in both PPR and half-point PPR do you think you can cover? I think you can even cover as far as 100 points half-point PPR pretty easily, where, we look at 100 points, it feels so big, but we have to keep in mind that there are both injuries maybe to the top teams, and you could be getting guys back on other teams. And then, you can have a week where you score 160 and first place scores 100, and boom, that's 60 points right there. So what's your intuition for how many points you can cover on a team?
On just one team?
I remember in years past being 100 points back in a 5-5-5 and covering it in 3 weeks. Yeah. So things can happen.
Yeah. I mean, and you and I talked about this. I'm going to go on this site real quick and figure this out. But Cousins and Richardson.
The Cousins teams are going to be dying.
There's only 3,000 of these. Only 3,000 teams have Cousins and Richardson, and I have 2 of them that are currently in the advancing. But of those 3,000, 21%. Yeah, so there's 677. That's crazy. Only 677 that have those 2, and 2 of them are mine. And those 2 teams are almost assuredly going to fall out of the playoffs.
For me, the teams that couldn't, my Jamar Chase teams, looks like I have 4 to 6 teams within 50 or so points. So those maybe have a chance. And then you and Jefferson, you're still holding on to 5 teams. It was 8 after week 6 is my memory. So let's see.
And yeah, one of those is 5 points behind. One of them is crazy. That one team is in 5th place, but only 13 points behind. That's got to be all really bunched. Yeah.
It's just such a wide spread. So you can just look through yourself too and just click into the points behind. I don't know. Obviously Jefferson, I think, is going to come back, but how many maybe this falls to 3 or so. I still think he's going to advance fine due to the correlation with Cousins and Addison doing good. But I don't know. A lot can change. Who would be the players you're most excited to advance to the playoffs that we haven't already mentioned? I think Eckler and Bijan stand out from the first round just because they're the lowest advance rate guys, and we know they have a ceiling. Who are some of the other guys that you foresee big second halves for that maybe are disappointing?
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp obviously falls into there for the same reason.
Kupp's annoying, man, because like there's third round Kupp, there's second round Kupp, there's like maybe fourth round Kupp, you know?
Yeah. All right. Thinking of your question, there's another topic that I wanted to discuss that's kind of in a similar light with this. I mean, Breece Hall's got to be another one.
I think he's going to be a big plus advance rate guy, though, right? Like, he's at 18%. I think that's going to climb.
I could go higher. Yep, no, I agree.
Like, let's look at some of the red boxes here. Charbonnet, maybe, that's one of my highest exponent players. So that really,
Jonathan Taylor
JT,
could be a huge one. If like Zach Moss were to get hurt, Jonathan Taylor becomes RB2 or 3 in projections. Like that backfield is just so valuable of a backfield.
Joe Burrow for sure. Most of the red boxes are just like bad players, you know?
Yeah.
I would say some of the like the Tajay Spears types.
Yeah.
The
put Chig in there.
Chig, I don't know.
His last 3 games, he had a 21%, 24%, and 25% target share. Getting Will Levis, who's willing to throw it a bit more downfield, and Chig may be that separator downfield. And I'll throw it out there for tonight. Like you can get on DraftKings Chig for 40 plus yards, I think like plus 250. But I like Chig as a breakout for the second half.
Nice.
Okay. Question here from a discussion standpoint, because we talk about tight ends and there's all like when late tight end was doing good early on because Hunter Henry got a touchdown, Hayden Hurst got a touchdown, Dalton Schultz got early on, the people who were elite tight end were like, no, this is actually good for elite tight end because now my elite tight end is going to have a lower advance rate when I get to the playoffs. Okay. Now, late tight end's not doing well. Elite tight end's doing well. It's having a high advance rate. And people are like, oh, this is good for my elite tight end because I'm going to advance the playoffs. Okay. So, like, obviously, by that logic, you're just going to say elite tight end is good no matter what. And I get that. And I think there's a decent argument for it. What I'm trying to understand we see the Cooper Kupp, we see the Austin Eckler. Those have a lot of opportunity cost because they are being drafted in the first round. But should we be focusing more on trying to, in whatever scenario, and I know we talked about this, like get a low-owned guy into the playoffs. But like in the later rounds, as we've seen, it really doesn't matter like what you do from an advance rate standpoint. It's just about hitting on them. So like I kind of want to, I don't know. Maybe it's just like those rookies are just that much more valuable from a playoff standpoint because the lower Charbonnet's advance rate gets, but he still has that upside. Maybe it's the running backs who have that ping pong aspect and can break out in one game.
Well, to one of your points, it still seems like you're forming your question a little bit. Like I've always said in the past, at least, like an expensive drafted tight end is kind of hard to be a bad best ball pick to me because as long as they actually do have a ceiling that justifies their cost, right? You can win a lot of ways, to your point. They either are advance rate monsters, right? And now you're advancing teams, or they are not, which is maybe even better for you. And now you have leverage at, a low scoring position that has a lot of variance. Now, you can say that about a lot of players. I think it's a little bit more impactful at tight end where it's like, even Darren Waller, if he's playing weeks 15, 16, 17, I'd be excited to have him. But it kind of seems like tight end as a whole is just like better now. So it makes it a little bit more tougher to stomach, where it's like the gap between TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller versus like Jake Ferguson, Kincaid, Laporta is not that great. And so I don't know there. And then, yeah, like to your point, like just even more rookie fever next year, because it's like, what rookies are you disappointed to have? Nathaniel Dell, no. Michael Wilson, no. Like you like to have Jaden Reed, no. Like all these rookie picks, even Mingo, right? Like Mingo's been awful, but he's at least getting used. Unlike like for me, I drafted a lot of like DPJ. He's, I mean, a little bit of life there, but like awful, you know? And so I don't know. I spitballed enough to let you finish your
No, I think it's a good point, and I don't really have a conclusion or anything here. Just trying to kind of continue to think through. So, like Laporta is what is this 12th round? I can't tell. It's about
Yeah, but he was a round 18 guy for a lot of season 2, so he's weird.
No, that's fair. But let's see. All I'm going with is he's a between 12th and last round, and his advance rate is 23.7%.
You got him round 11, but yeah, whatever.
Okay. Mark Andrews is a third rounder, same advance rate, 24.1, 23.7. And then if you look at their points on the year, Andrews has 91 to Laporta's 89. It's a 2-point difference.
It's probably the negative correlation of Dallas pieces to date. But no, I don't know. You're right. Like that's kind of weird. It's like how is in half point PPR we got Laporta with 89, Andrews is giving you 20 and 25. Laporta's giving you 18, 18, 16. It is very weird how they are advancing so close, even though Laporta has outscored him.
It's got to be that Mark Andrews is tied to Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see how often those combos are.
And we can look that up. Yeah. And you know who he's also probably paired with a decent clip? Is Sam Laporta as the tight end too, where it's like maybe Andrews drafters are a little bit better. 3,000 Andrews Laporta teams.
Right, first of all, what's baseline? So when you said baseline is 56,000. So of those 56,000, Mark Andrews is with McCaffrey 10% of the time.
5,200, yep.
Okay. And he's with Tyreek Hill. This is going to be even higher because of the correlation. We said higher.
9,000.
All right. So 15% of the time, he is with one of those two. Now let's do the same with Laporta to eliminate the random.
I'm just going to let my cat out real quick.
Okay. All right, so 15% of the time, Mark Andrews is with Tyreek Hill or CMC, which is bringing his advance rates up. We now need to get rid of Mark Andrews in this and use Laporta. So let's use Laporta and see, as a comparison, what percent he's with those to baseline. Yeah.
Laporta, we got 4,000 with Tyreek.
All right, so that.
But to your point in all this, I would say I'm really excited to advance any team that does not have Tyreek, CMC, or Mostert, because those dudes are advancing at an insane clip right now. And yes, they might smash in the playoffs. But if you just have any team but those guys and they can give you ceilings, you got leverage.
So 8,000 there, and the first one was 15. So you're twice. So Mark Andrews is twice as likely to be paired with CMC or Tyreek
compared to let's look at some guys dragging you down. Pollard was 6K. The Detroit guys are kind of all positive, you know. Yeah, me too.
It's a weird one. Yeah. I did a couple of those. I did a couple of those early first rounders to see if there's any crazy teams, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad.
7,000 with Dak.
Which makes sense from the it's a really interesting one. Like how it must just be the Tyreek CMC carrying it.
Like Jameson Williams has been a slight drag. 6,400. Yeah, I think. And then, but Andrews is also being negatively dragged by like Bateman, probably, right?
Yeah,
More
the
so
thing,
than Laporta.
having a Bateman on your team doesn't actually hurt that much. Like, what is Bateman's advance rate?
15%.
Yeah. Like,
well, and to your point, there's so many bad picks. That's like the kind, like, it's easy to hit on a fade when there's a lot of fades, right?
like Amon-Ra's been pretty decent too.
Not as much in half point though, right? Like he's only at 16%, which is the same as CD Lamb. And CD Lamb's giving me like 1 week almost,
But again, that's just because if you drafted CD Lamb or Amon-Ra, you did not draft Tyreek or McCaffrey, and you probably didn't draft AJ Brown or Diggs. You might have got lucky and got a strong turn, but those two are not. Those aren't.
There's like 1 week where apparently Tyreek fell. I didn't get any of that, but no, this is a interesting thing we're looking at here. Any other things you have to say for the day? I think it's going to be close on the advance rates. Maybe I'll get you on advance rates just with Chase. But if Devontae Adams has a big second half, you could get me. If Pollard has a big second half, that would help me. We already looked at the other, like Eckler, Kelsey would help you. Diggs helps me.
The QB's just coming back. So if you go to my portfolio, let's check real quick, like Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett. The website, the BBMDB.
Oh, you're advancing teams?
Yeah, and then sort through like Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones. Like this is where I've had some teams that have just been struggling to even get QB points. And so hopeful that something like a Pickett, or now that I'm just coming back, are just going to drag some back up that we're in that 3, 4, 5th spot.
For me, it's like running back points. But like, let's see. Like Geno's been whatever. Quarterback, I'm actually like pretty.
Quarterback, okay. You're doing well.
Quarterback, I'm doing well. Like running back,
I'm not. Is huge. Yeah.
Running back, I'm not. Pollard, I'm only advancing 3 of my Pollard teams of 31. So we got some close teams there. I guess Jamar Chase we already looked at.
It just comes down to, is there with Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett coming back, it's at least like, okay, now we know they're going from zeros to on the field. With guys like Devontae, with guys like Pollard, I don't know. Do we have anything that gives us increased hope that they're going to start producing points? I don't know.
Well, I think for both, yes. You could say for Adams, Aiden O'Connell gave him a huge target share in at least a game. So do we see that going forward? And maybe he's just better than Jimmy G. And for Pollard, it's that he's played such wonky game scripts with like no games, like close games or anything. So maybe better days ahead. I also love Pollard's playoff schedule, but clearly you did not, like, with you having big bags on Hopkins and Adams, clearly you just bet on talent and didn't care about the quarterback situations. Is that something you plan to do forward, or do you feel like you ran bad there? Do you feel like that's a lesson? What's your take on that?
I think Devontae has shown us time and time again that quarterbacks just don't matter for him, and he still has produced. So of his career, how
could you say that though when he's disappointing right now? Because of quarterback.
How can I take a body of work that is multiple seasons and not be influenced by a 2 or 3 game sample? I don't know.
Well, it's the I mean, to me, it was, I would take Devontae, to be clear, but I wanted the quarterbacks where I didn't have QB questions. I mean, the wideouts where I didn't have QB questions more. I would, Garrett Wilson, I think he would have beat him with Rodgers, but obviously he's not going to anymore. Amon-Ra, Lamb, Brown, Diggs. I mean, these guys were too expensive, but it's really like.
So who did I not draft because I drafted Devontae? I didn't draft Chubb.
Pollard.
I didn't draft Pollard. I didn't draft Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah, which is not like the Rodgers, probably ran hot there. Pollard.
Yeah.
Saquon. I don't know. All right, man. Well, this has been a fun chat. Our side bet's 5K, so not as big as the Dan Zach 50K one. You got a solid edge on Dan there, but he's got big bags on Saquon and JT. Anything else you have to say, or anything else you want to look at? I got time.
This is fun. This is fun. No, we touched on it all. I saw someone was asking about my take, or like our takes on the Cousins situation, and I'll just use this as an opportunity. I've got a podcast that I put out twice a week, and the one that I put out today specifically talked about the Cousins trade, the Josh Dobbs, and how that all plays out. So I'll just say, go check that out. Just in any podcast, or look at my Twitter, or on podcast, just search for my name, and I think it'll pop up.
Yes, make sure to listen to Justin's content. He's got great stuff going there. Real quick, let's just look at the leaderboard. I forgot to talk about that part because you're killing the leaderboard. I don't know about you, but I didn't really think there was that actionable of a thing we could do for the leaderboard. Did you, or did it? Do you think you're running good? Do you think you built with the leaderboard in mind at all? You got a team in the top 500, which is awesome.
Yeah.
What's your take on the leaderboard and whatnot?
Yeah, from an actionable standpoint, I think it's very clearly just play the best plays. And then now it's haha funny. Okay, but how's that actionable? I think it's actionable by going after the specifically running backs that have substantial upside and breakout potential. On this one, I got lucky with the Thielen because I don't have that much Thielen, but obviously he's broken out. Because normally in that range, I was drafting a bunch of Raheem Mostert, a bunch of Devon Achane. And I think for where you need to finish in the top 0.5%, top 1%, you need to get the guys that are going to break out. So how do you get those guys? Well, it's unlikely that's going to be at the quarterback position. It's unlikely that's going to be at the tight end position. It's more likely you find, hey, running back or wide receiver that really just gets a fantastic role or is, from an efficiency standpoint, it's rookies because there's a wider range of options. Obviously, if we knew Devon Achane had the skill set he has now, we would have been drafting him way earlier. Next year, he'll probably be a third rounder, if not earlier. So I think those are the types that hey, if you are playing for, I think this is a drafters conversation. If you're trying to win that drafters tournament, focus on the elite guys. I had this conversation with Leone because he was pushing back and he's like, yeah, but Adam Thielen doesn't fit into that at all. We never would have predicted this. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I get that. And so that's where it's okay, well, how much is this just creating a narrative to follow? But I do believe that the Mostert, the Achane, the Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson,
the Thielen one, you could have said target volume. Because I even remember in the offseason thinking to myself, look, these other dudes could suck. He could just get a bunch of targets. And I still was whatever. If I lose, I lose. There's a lot of time in the leaderboard. You got your top team is 1150 pretty much, and my team is 1090. So I got 3 on the leaderboard, and you have 5, including 3 in the top 2K. So that's an exciting sweat, but there's not a lot of points separating a lot of time for that to shake out.
It's easy to fall off the leaderboard. It's very difficult to climb it. So I think that's helpful to know because if you have an amazing week, it's most likely that other people have those same players and they're also having amazing weeks. You really need the Gus Edwards is the perfect situation where Gus Edwards did mostly nothing for the year, then has a 3 TD game. If you luckily have him on your top team, that's how you can really climb the leaderboard.
Yeah, I had pulled these stats last week just to kind of think through how hard it is to climb. And I like your point there where it's Zach Charbonnet, 3 touchdown week. That kind of guy could do it for you.
Agreed.
And it was this was last week. It was Hopkins did it. 7% of teams had, or 692 teams, were above 1,000, which is actually 0.1% teams. 5,000, this is only for the leaderboard, was above. Oh,
you're saying above 1,000 points.
This was above 1,000. This was above 950.
Okay.
And this was just on the leaderboard. So, there's not that many teams at the very top. This was the distribution graph of it, where it's this is the last place team on the leaderboard. This is the top team. So you can see to 10,000 here, or 1,000, this is 692. So there's not that many teams you need to fail last week to vault up here It's a very sharp drop, as you can see here.
What's my top team look like again? I forgot. You were just showing it.
It is your top team is a Josh Allen, Bryce Young team with Henry, Etienne, Achane, Gus Edwards, Dillon. So you see him set at running back, set at quarterback. Ayuk, Godwin, Addison, Bateman, Moore, Mooney, Thielen, Chark, Woods, Kelsey, Hurts. So set at tight end. Wide receivers definitely a little weak, especially with Addison falling off. But Ayuk, Godwin, Thielen are all studs minimum. Addison's still going to give you some weeks. The other guy's not so great. My top team is also Josh Allen, Bryce Young team. Hall, Swift, Mostert. Mostert super common, though not a guy you want. Chuba, Algier, Jamal, Diggs, Metcalf, Davis, Addison. Wide receiver also pretty weak over here. Shaheed.
You're top heavy. You're top heavy, though. Just not much depth. Shaheed's pretty good, though.
Yeah, Shaheed got a lot of.
You can get some flex spots with your tight end, too. I like that team. Yeah.
I have a lot of Hawk Kincaid combo. So going to be
honestly, what we need some bad Josh Allen weeks and some big Bryce Young that pair with it. And that's the wonkiness of the leaderboard is we need, because there's a bunch of Josh Allen up there. We need Josh Allen to have those bad games. And our Bryce Young, our second one, gives us that leverage in passing.
I don't think we're going to get it. We're going to get the Allen Sun Run season, just coast to coast. Well, this was fun to look at, man. I think we'll look at it. Maybe we'll jump back on week after week 14 and see where we sit advance rates. And then dude, we're less than 2 months away from crowning a $3 million champion. Call your shot. Who are the first and second round picks on the winning BBM 4 team?
First and second round picks on the
Who is
winning BBM 4. I'm going back to so San Francisco plays
Washington.
10.
So I smash spot.
Better for the passing game, but still pretty decent. I'll go Tyreek Hill versus Baltimore. I think that game really has shootout potential. Baltimore's defense has looked really good, but that doesn't matter against Miami. So first round pick, I'm going to go Tyreek Hill. And then second round pick, I'm going to go.
I'm actually afraid of Miami's playoff schedule.
Derrick Henry. Miami's playoff schedule in 15 and 16 are tough. They're all tough, but.
For me, I would go. Diggs almost destroyed the Patriots. Josh Allen just kind of missed him on some. I'm going to go with a low-owned Bijan, maybe, or Diggs versus the Pats. It's the team that might be giving up. Devontae Adams against the Colts. Saquon. I don't know. There's so many good options. I talked through a lot of this yesterday on stream, guys. If you haven't seen it, for me, just hit the like, hit the subscribe, join my Discord. How's Herzig's bet with Dan going? Justin's got a solid lead. You can look it up. Dan's name on.
I was going to say, here, I tried to put a link in the comments. I don't know if I'm able, but.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat here.
It says this comment has failed to post to Liam Murphy.
I don't know. You can send it to me in the private chat and I can paste it maybe.
Let me try that. Yeah. But this is, you and I were talking about this, the episode when I broke down the bet with him.
Oh yes, Justin put a pod out, so you can follow the Twitter link there.
That has a link to it.
All right, for Justin, for me, let us know in the comment who you think's going to take it down. For me personally, I'm hoping to win the $3 million and then I can lose the side bet, but that would be the happiest 5K I ever paid out in my life.
That would be fantastic. You and I have a team together. How are those teams doing?
Well, we didn't draft any on mine. Only on no. Oh, that was on Pat's. That was on. I don't know the.
You joined. I have the one. You and Pat joined me for one, and then we joined him on that stream.
Yeah, so I don't know. Also, for your bets, your stream teams don't count, right? So how many of do you know the breakdown of your stream teams that don't count?
28 of them do not count, and so I have them all labeled. We're in second place right now. I don't know if we can see this.
Hey.
But May 8th, Corinne Liam. And so we're sitting in second. If you want to pull it up, it's 981.64 is the score.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't do any team stream BBMs this year. Only the lower stakes ones.
We did
how many points?
981.64. There you go.
98.
So this was me, you, and Pat. Dak and Goff. Okay, not bad. Gibbs, Dobbins, ew. This was very early. This was May 8th. Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Jalen Warren, Deuce Vaughn, CD, Amon-Ra, Cooper, Evans. Good wide receivers. It's okay. It's an okay team.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel's been actually a smash with his touchdowns, but he's hurt now.
Yeah.
Schultz, Laporta, Everett.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you know how many of your advancing teams do not count right now?
I believe it's 5. I have it easily available.
5. Okay, so Justin's only got a 1-team lead on me, but also
122.
Yeah. So that is what I think. That is the biggest thing I would change for the bet. Is I think anyone who drafted 150 versus 122 is just like, I mean, obviously you need to do a significant amount to advance, like at least 100, but it's just hard when you're divided by 122 and I'm divided by 150 to ever win, in my point.
You'd have to do a lot more work to convince me that someone drafting only 122 versus 150 has a distinct advantage.
I think it's just like a mathematical thing where on average your team loses dollars. So when you're basing it off ROI, you're just dead in the water when you draft more. Unless that team, those extra 27 teams, one of those makes 500K or whatever, 100K.
Right. So like, I think there's an argument that 122 versus 150 is statistically significant, doesn't make enough of a difference. But then also, if you only drafted one, like I think it's just more variance, but I don't think there's an edge either way.
I'm laughing because I Googled week 17 images and it just pulled up like a pregnancy thing. And this guy wrote, "We're going to pretend we didn't see that."
I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's I was looking for week 17.
I get it. Week 17 images, it's more likely to show up people who are talking about week 17 and pregnancy than
I don't know what I was thinking.
Us sickos who are talking about week 17 for the NFL. Too funny.
Yeah. All right, guys. For me, I'll have a pick'em show tomorrow, so make sure to tune in for that. Justin, you can catch him on his Twitter, linked it here. He does a lot of content around the industry. Good luck to both of us, mostly to me, but have a great day, everybody.
Subscribe, like the channel. See y'all later.
Woo!